Welcome to A Place for Trains. My name is Robert, and in this video I want to discuss some of the smallest N-scale track layouts that are possible. Many of us don't have a lot of space to dedicate in our homes for a layout, but you may have an empty tabletop or a side table where you can set something small up. I recently cleaned off this dresser in my home office. I have about a 19-inch in depth by 64-inch in width dresser top where I can set up a small layout. I wanted track that I could snap together so I could pack it up later if desired. So I bought a Bachmann Spirit of Christmas layout, which has a 24 by 36 oval track included. Knowing this was too deep for the dresser, I looked into the Kato track. Kato makes some of the smallest radius N-scale track that's available. It is called the Kato Unitrack Compact. This inner loop that you're looking at here is a 4 5/8 radius track. As you can see, the inside diameter is about the size of $3 bills laid side by side. The inner loop is about 10.5 inches deep, because the radius, of course, is half of a circle, or half, it's not the full diameter. So it's 10.5 inches deep by 12 3/4 inches wide. The next loop is about 13 inches deep by 15 1/4 wide. The third loop is 15.5 inches deep by 18 inches wide, and the fourth, the largest one, is 18 inches deep by 20 3/4 inches wide. The reason I set up an oval and not just a circle is because the linking of the cars together, they don't want to couple together very well on a curve. It's very difficult. N-scale is pretty small. On the straight track, in this layout, I'm using the Kato 2040, which is the same size as their 2041 power feeder track. Since I'm using Bachmann controllers, I've made my own joiner feeders. But you could just use a Kato controller and plug it directly into a power feeder track. I have the track elevated on some notepads to allow the wires to run underneath on the tracks, but you wouldn't have to do this if you had just one loop and just one controller. It's important to note that Bachmann recommends their 11 1/4 radius for the smallest radius for their stock engines to run on. Okay, disclaimer, I'm not recommending you run on a smaller radius than the recommended by the manufacturer. Run it at your own risk. Okay, what you're seeing here is the Bachmann Spirit of Christmas running on an 8.5 inch radius. That's the outer loop. And it will run all the way down to the 6-inch radius, the second most inner track. It doesn't run great on it, but it will run okay on it. It will not run on the 4 5/8 inch track. The track curve is too tight for it. While we're talking about the inner track, I have an Arnold 060 switcher running on this track with a Bachmann tanker and I believe an Atlas caboose. The rolling stock on this inner loop needs to have a coupler on the truck to make this tight radius. I've found no body coupler cars that will run on this tight of a radius. The cars need to be fairly short also, because the longer the car, it won't make it that radius turn. If you have more room, I recommend not using this 4 5/8 radius track. It's very limiting on what can actually be run on it. Okay, so what are the actual parts? The parts that we have here, I'm just going to move the camera. The parts we have here is the inner track is this 2176. It's the 4 5/8 radius. The next one out, which is a little more forgiving, is the 2174, which is the 6-inch radius track. Then we have the 2072, which is the third track, which is a 7-inch track. And then the 8.5, which is the 2170, which is the 8.5 radius track. And the inner pieces are this 2040, which is the same size as their feeder track, the 2041. You can see that they measure everything, of course, in millimeters, so it's 62 millimeters long, and it's about 2 7/8 in American standard. The Bachmann Spirit of Christmas I bought on eBay, and it was not a bad price, a little over $120, $150, somewhere in that range, $125 to $150. The little Arnold that's running around here, it was pretty inexpensive. I think I paid about $25 for it, and the rolling stock that's there each was about maybe $5 to $10, so it's not super expensive stuff. I would definitely, if you're looking to set up something small, I would not recommend this smaller compact track. It's just so tight that almost nothing will run on it other than some very short trains. The external track is pretty forgiving, but as you can see over here, I've got a Kato engine. It's a 262, I think. It's a 282, and I think it's called a Northern. It runs on the outside track only. It's a nice engine, very quiet, very smooth. But clearly, the outside track is really the best choice if you're trying to run something on a tabletop that you still have about 20 inches of depth. This is from this edge here to this edge back in the back is about 19 inches. So this track, like I said, is about 18 inches wide. It fits on most things, but I definitely wouldn't recommend the center track, to be honest with you. I just think it's too tight, unless you have almost no space to set up anything. This is the Bachmann Spirit of Christmas running on the Kato 4 5/8 radius 2176 Unitrack, the compact. And as you can see, it stutters in the turns, and eventually what it'll do is it'll actually climb off the track. Hopefully this gives you some ideas about where you can set up a small layout. Thank you for joining me on A Place for Trains. Please like, share, and subscribe.